When it comes to video games, there are a number of factors that make a game enjoyable. Things like the story, the gameplay, the sound design, and the world design can easily carry a game to success if done right. However, none of these elements can really compare to a game's characters. Characters are some of the most important parts of a game, and good characters can easily make a game even better than it already is. The Zelda series has no shortage of good characters. Groose from Skyward Sword, Midna from Twilight Princess, and the Happy Mask Salesman from Majora's Mask are just a few that come to mind for me personally. However, I think there's one character that outclasses every Zelda character before them. In my opinion, they are one of the most complex, three-dimensional characters that the Zelda series has ever seen in its 36-year history, but the fandom has mostly swept them under the rug in favor of other characters, and frankly, I think that's just, well, I'll let him say it.
I mean, it's just asinine.
Of all the characters in Breath of the Wild, Revali is the character that I've personally seen the most hate for online. Everything I've seen usually amounts to, he's an asshole, so I don't like him, and just leave it at that. However, this is doing a major injustice to Revali and his character, completely glossing over some details that make him much more than the arrogant jerk that everyone makes him out to be. So I'm here in order to set the record straight and explain why Revali deserves better. So sit back, relax, make sure you've hit that subscribe button, and let's start the video. For those of you who haven't played Breath of the Wild or just need a quick refresher, here's the rundown. 100 years before the events of Breath of the Wild, the evil known as Calamity Ganon was prophesied to return and wreak havoc on Hyrule. In order to combat this, King Roam Bospharamus Hyrule ordered the excavation of an army of autonomous defense machines known as Guardians and 4 large mechanical beasts known as Divine Beasts. Each Divine Beast was to be piloted by an exceptionally skilled individual referred to as a champion. In total, there were 4 champions: the Zora Princess Mipha, the Gerudo Chieftain Urbosa, the Goron hero Daruk, and of course, the Rita warrior Revali. The 4 champions were tasked with assisting Link and Zelda while they worked to seal Calamity Ganon. The Divine Beasts would assist Link in weakening Ganon so Zelda could deal the finishing blow and seal the Demon King. While Daruk, Mipha, and Urbosa are perfectly content with their roles, Revali is the only one who voices his disdain. In most of the memories that we see him in, Revali has this cocky, arrogant nature about him, acting fairly hostile towards one member of the team in particular, Link. Revali says it best in the memory Revali's Flap.
Yet despite these truths, it seems that I've been tapped to merely assist you. All because you happen to have that little darkness-sealing sword on your back.
He's even more hostile towards Link in the prequel game, Age of Calamity.
Then there's you. The one part that doesn't add up. Why should this nobody be trusted to lead us in the coming battle?
Unlike the other champions, who are all confident and friendly towards Link, Revali acts more like a rival. This is something that's supported by a statement the lead artist in charge of designing the NPCs, Hirohiko Shinoda, made in creating a champion, the official art book of Breath of the Wild. Quote, "Creating a design that communicated a character that sees Link as a rival, but could not be honest with himself about it, took a lot of trial and error." End quote. So now that we have a good idea of who Revali is, it's time to begin dissecting his character to figure out exactly why he is the way he is. We've already discussed how Revali is a cocky, arrogant jerk who thinks way too highly of himself, but I don't think that's the real Revali. If anything, I think the Revali we see is just a persona. The real Revali, in my opinion, isn't some egotistical jerk. He's lonely, self-conscious, and insecure. Revali's diary from the Champion's Ballad DLC helps shed some light on his character. In the first entry, Revali states that he won another archery competition, completely shattering all of the previous records and setting an insurmountably high bar. He says that, quote, "Everywhere I go, I receive praise and affirmations that I am the pride of the Rito, and that he could get used to this." This tells us that Revali didn't always have such a big ego. It was only after he got a taste of the spotlight and the praise that he started to get a bit of an ego. In the same entry, we learn that when asked by the village elder what he wanted his prize to be for winning the competition, Revali requested for a training ground to be built so he could hone his skills. What's interesting, however, is where Revali requested his training ground to be built. Instead of having it built on the outskirts of the village, he requested it to be built a good distance away from the village up in the mountains. Why wouldn't Revali, a cocky, arrogant jerk, request his training ground to be built where everyone could see his impressive feats? Well, I think it's because he's insecure. People who are insecure tend to isolate themselves from others. And what better to isolate yourself in than a small training ground a fair distance away from everyone else? That way, no one can see the real Revali, someone who's struggling to master their abilities and pushing themselves to the limit each and every day. He doesn't want his people to see their pride and joy as someone who's flawed and constantly messes up. He wants them to see the Revali who's confident in his skills as an archer. So if Revali is insecure about himself, there has to be a reason for him to feel insecure. So what could have caused it? Well, I think it's the other champions. The other champions, especially Link, unintentionally make Revali more insecure about himself and his abilities. This is best summed up in a post by Reddit user DiddyDubs over on the Breath of the Wild subreddit back in 2018. In that post, they point out the social standings of the 4 champions. Mipha and Urbosa are both members of the nobility. Daruk, meanwhile, is part of a bloodline of respected Goron heroes who can use the ability that he dubs Daruk's protection. Hell, even Link and Zelda are born into their positions by destiny. All of them were essentially born to play a part in sealing Calamity Ganon, except for Revali. Revali wasn't born into a high-status family. He wasn't a prince or the son of the chief. He was just a regular Rito. This conclusion is further supported by the champion's successors. Sidon, the Zora prince, is Mipha's younger brother. Riju, the Joran. What the fuck am I saying? Riju, the current Gerudo chieftain, is a descendant of Urbosa. Yunobo is Daruk's grandson. Then there's Teba. Teba is just another member of the Rito tribe. While he is a warrior like Revali was, he isn't related to Revali by blood. With this in mind, this would probably mean that Revali earned his societal status, and more so his status as a champion, through years of blood, sweat, and tears, while the others had their titles essentially handed to them thanks to the circumstances of their birth. But it doesn't end there. The other champions were also more than likely born with their powers. In the memory Mipha's Touch, Mipha says the following to Link.
You were just a reckless child, always getting yourself hurt at every turn. Every time, I would heal you, just as I'm doing right now.
This means that Mipha more than likely had the ability to heal wounds for most of her life. Daruk, as established, is part of a bloodline of Gorons who can use the ability that he refers to as Daruk's protection. This means that his ability is passed down to his descendants, as we see with his grandson, Yunobo. And I don't care who you are, but I seriously doubt that there's any way for someone to just train themselves to be able to summon a bolt of lightning to strike down their foes at the simple snap of a finger. Hell, we even see this trend of being born with exceptional abilities in Link and Zelda. Zelda has the blood of the goddess Hylia, and while she does struggle to unlock her powers throughout the course of both Breath of the Wild and Age of Calamity, she is born with these powers. Link, meanwhile, was born into a family of knights and able to beat soldiers in combat when he was just a child. Not only that, but it has been theorized that Link's Flurry Rush is actually his champion ability and not just a gameplay mechanic. This is even supported by an entry in Daruk's training journal where Link says to Daruk that when he focuses, it feels like time slows down. I won't delve too much into this as it doesn't really relate to the theory at hand, but there's a great video by NintendoBlackCrisis that I'll link to in the description. Revali, on the other hand, is the only champion that we see struggling with his ability. In the DLC memory, we see Revali take a particularly hard hit when he's trying to stay in the Eye of the Whirlwind, only to be sent plummeting to the ground. He berates himself for not being strong enough to stay aloft, and he says that he needs to be stronger. This is where we see the real Revali. Someone who is struggling with their abilities. Someone who is insecure and wishes to train in isolation so no one can see him fail. Someone who's jealous that he had to work his ass off to be on the same footing as people who are just as honored and respected as he is, except they didn't put in nearly as much work as he did. And what happens when he realizes that Zelda just watched him fail? He puts on his overconfident, egotistical persona. He can't let anyone, not even the Princess of Hyrule, see his true colors. This jealousy in turn also explains his attitude towards Link. In Revali's eyes, Link is just another run-of-the-mill Hylian. To him, the only reason that Link plays a more important role than he does is
All because you happen to have that little darkness-sealing sword on your back.
Revali's journal makes it seem like all he wants is for his skills to be validated. In the Revali's flat memory, where he confronts Link, he's trying to elicit a reaction from the hero. By receiving Link's approval, Revali would essentially be on the same level as Link. He wouldn't be the second best anymore. He would have received praise from the legendary hero himself. However, Link remains silent, and this agitates Revali. He interprets this silence as Link not being impressed with Revali's skill. We, however, know this isn't true. We know that Link is silent because of the burden he has to bear. To quote a passage from Zelda's diary, "When I finally got around to asking why he's so quiet all the time, I could tell it was difficult for him to say. But he did. With so much at stake, and with so many eyes upon him, he feels it necessary to stay strong and to silently bear any burden. A feeling I know all too well. For him, it has caused him to stop outwardly expressing his thoughts and feelings. I always believed him to be a simply gifted person who has never faced a day of hardship in his life. How wrong I was. Everyone has struggles that go unseen by the world. I was so absorbed with my own problems, I failed to see his." Revali is just like Zelda in this regard. He believed that Link was a gifted person who never once faced a day of hardship in his life, and that Link was just chosen by the Master Sword. Revali never stopped to consider that Link may have been dealing with the same problems that he was going through. It's just as Zelda says, everyone has struggles that go unseen by the world. Revali was so absorbed with his own problems, he failed to see Link's. In a cruel twist of irony, the person that Revali seems to hate the most is the person that he has the most in common with. There's one last bit about Revali that I believe is worth mentioning. His attitude and dialogue are different in Japanese. This was brought to my attention by a recent video made by the YouTuber QuestWithAaron, and it's criminally underviewed in my opinion. He was kind enough to allow me to use the footage from his video, namely the parts with the translated diary entries. I'll mention a few examples, but you'll have to go and watch his video if you want to see every example of how Revali's dialogue was changed in translation. In the fourth entry of his diary, Revali expresses his feelings towards Zelda's plan to defeat the Calamity, calling the plan completely absurd because, quote, "the divine beasts are little more than backup for some Hylian knight who has the honor of fighting Calamity Ganon," end quote. Revali doesn't like the idea of not being the main hero in both the English and Japanese versions, but it's for completely different reasons. In the Japanese version, Revali doesn't understand why he and the Divine Beasts are playing the, quote, supporting role of being his defense, his referring to Link. In the English version, meanwhile, Revali is much more upset by the fact that he's been reduced to a sidekick. Another interesting piece of information comes from the Japanese version of Revali's flap and the diary entry that corresponds with this memory, entry 7. As we discussed a few minutes ago, Revali is trying to elicit a reaction from Link to earn some kind of recognition. He states in his diary that he gave Link the privilege of seeing him perform Revali's Gale. When Link remains silent, Revali flies off to Meadow. He even goes as far to state in his diary that, quote, "our interactions were a waste of time." The Japanese version, however, tells a completely different story. In Japanese, Revali says that he demonstrated his newly completed powerful skill to Link. Notice that he didn't say that Link was given the privilege to see it. This is followed by what I believe to be a damning piece of evidence. Quote, "no reaction, even though the skill still has a low success rate, and I pushed myself to the limit to show him." There you have it. Right there, clear as day, is proof that Revali was indeed trying to get recognition from Link. Revali isn't angry that Link didn't react. He's disappointed. He wanted Link to react so they could spark a rivalry to push each other to be better. He even outright confirms that he wants to start a rivalry with Link in the last part. In the English version, where he says that he withdrew to Meadow because their interactions were a complete waste of time, In Japanese, Revali says that, quote, "This competition is going nowhere. It was starting to get ridiculous, so I withdrew to Meadow," end quote. The last part I'd like to point out is Revali's Gale itself. You see, that's not the original name. It's another example of the English translation changing things. In Japanese, Revali's signature ability is called Revali's Ferocity, or Revali's Rage. It's an odd word choice, right? Revali's Gale makes far more sense for the ability that creates a literal gale of wind for him to ascend on. While the words ferocious and ferocity are mostly used to describe someone or something with a violent or savage nature, they can be used as a positive descriptor, such as when you're describing someone with a fierce determination. This is why the Japanese version of Revali's Gale is named Revali's Ferocity. With all of this information in mind, I think it's now time to discuss the major shift in Revali's tone. Now, I'm not the first to cover this part of the game, and I hopefully won't be the last. The first video that I saw covering this was done by a channel called FuzzPunchArcade in their own analysis of Revali's character. I'll be sure to link their video down in the description below so you can check that video out after this one. During the events of Breath of the Wild, Link goes to Divine Beast Va Meadow to free it from the control of Calamity Ganon. With the help of Teba, Link managed to destroy the cannons and disable the force field around Meadow, allowing him to board the Divine Beast. When Link arrives at Va Meadow and activates the travel gate, Revali's spirit greets him with his trademark sass.
Well now, I've seen that face before. I had a feeling you would show up eventually, but making me wait 100 years is a bit indulgent. You're here to wrest control of Meadow away from Ganon, correct?
Upon activating the first and second terminals, he doesn't sound very impressed.
There are 4 terminals remaining. Still a ways to go. There are 3 terminals remaining. Keep going.
When there are 2 terminals remaining, however, Revali begins to sound surprised.
There are 2 terminals remaining. You're almost there.
His surprise increases when there's 1 terminal remaining.
Just 1 terminal remaining? What do you know?
By the time Link activates all 5 terminals, Revali realizes that Link may actually stand a chance against Windblight Ganon.
That was the last terminal. Now you just need to start the main control unit. I want you to take a good look at your map. There should be a new glowing point on there. Well, flap to it.
This ultimately culminates when Link activates the main terminal of Va Meadow and begins the fight with Windblight Ganon.
Good luck. That thing is one of Ganon's own, and it plays dirty. It defeated me 100 years ago, but only because I was winging it. I can't believe I'm actually saying this, but you must avenge me, Link!
During the fight with Windblight Ganon, Revali will occasionally say some things to Link. While some of them are a bit cocky and standoffish,
Hurting, are we? Avoiding attacks might be wise.
many of them show that he has a genuine concern for Link's well-being.
Careful! You okay? Doing alright? Don't go out like this.
When Windblight Ganon is finally defeated, Revali's spirit appears before Link, congratulating him on freeing Va Meadow. While he does retain a bit of his cockiness, you can tell that Revali has earned some respect for Link, going as far as to give the hero his life's work, Revali's Gale. While the other champions do also give you their abilities, Revali's is the only one that carries some real weight behind it. This isn't just Revali saying, "Oh here Link, take my power because everybody else gave you theirs." It's a sign of respect towards the hero. And while Revali doesn't outright admit that Link has earned his respect, Sean Chiplock's incredible performance makes it abundantly clear. In the end, Revali ends up becoming far more than the cocky, overconfident jerk that many Zelda fans have made him out to be. He's the only champion who wasn't born into a position of power or chosen by the goddess. He's the only champion who actually displayed some form of character development throughout the course of the story. He's the only champion who honestly felt like a believable character. His cocky, egotistical personality is just a facade to hide his more vulnerable and insecure side. a side that he doesn't dare show the world. Revali represents the underdogs of society, the people who have to rise above the challenges thrown at them in order to make it to the top, while those born into the higher parts of society don't. To me, he's the champion of the people, showing that anyone, no matter who they are or where they come from, can be a hero. Thanks so much for watching the video. I put a lot of effort into making this one since I wanted it to be absolutely perfect. No joke, I've rewritten this script about, I think, 5 times by the time I'm finally recording these lines. I wanted to give another shout out to QuestWithAaron for letting me use his footage of Revali's translated diary. Seriously, all of you guys need to go and subscribe to him right now. His videos are infinitely better than mine could ever be. But anyways, I really hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did, consider leaving a like, and if you liked it even more than that, why not subscribe? Because it only helps the channel grow, and I'll be sure to see you guys in the next video. See ya!